Hey, howdy. Well, I put it off long enough, but it's finally time. Peggle Knights, let's go! Oh, I forgot this was a thing, right. They have Spring Fever levels. And before I do anything else, let me do the Ode to Joy thing before I forget. Core blimey! Perhaps it's a little... what's the word for it? Perhaps it's a little unintuitive to start with the credits, but I wanted to do it now before I forgot. Think of it more like an opening ceremony to show where we're going. Anarchy. PopCap framework, that always kind of interested me. So, did they use the same engine for all of these games? I would imagine they must have. It is always fun where they have to credit Claude Debussy. And, like, having to credit, like, Vincent van Gogh and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and stuff like that for... I don't actually remember if... It's a hard question because there's a lot of crossed wires, but I have to wonder... to what extent... What is that? Oh. I have to wonder to what extent... Ode to Joy is in the public domain, because obviously it's in the public domain. But suppose that you make something that uses Ode to Joy as a sample. Do you have to... I mean, it's not like Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart has an estate. So who would you just... Are you required to credit... Are you required to credit Mozart? Is the weird thing. Oh. Since when did I continue? Okay. I'm not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth. Okay, so the first two worlds were Bjorn and I think it was still Bjorn and Jimmy, but I think it forks off from there. I don't remember. Oops. To be perfectly honest, the last time I booted this game up was in February, so, And I'm not talking Peggle in general, I'm talking specifically Knights. I booted it up all the way back in February because it was back when I was crafting the original idea for this project, which was the sort of a encyclopedic... It was sort of an encyclopedic, Oh, wait. Yo, we get to see this. It was sort of an encyclopedic video essay talking about PopCap's history, but I kind of prefer this. It's more comprehensive this way. Also, really, I got to see the cool interaction and it went in 10,000 twice. But I don't know why. I felt just kind of demotivated. Pardon me. I felt kind of demotivated to do this one. Because, I mean, as it happens, this is probably not the first time you've seen somebody play Peggle. Even if you haven't played it yourself. It's one of those games that has just stood the test of time and that people love to just pull out of their back pocket like, hold on, I got a game that I can play that I'm sure everyone will enjoy. It is, in essence, one of the greatest casual games of all time. And I think a lot of people wouldn't even say one of the. I think a lot of people would say that it is the greatest casual game of all time. That was cool, whoa. But the upshot to that is that it receives a lot of recognition. Which, under any other circumstance, I don't know why I said that so strangely. Any other circumstance, that would be fine. But my intent here is to compile all of PopCap's history, so I almost felt like it was unnecessary for me to play through this one and the original Peggle. But I thought about it a little bit more, and I still feel like it's important to have an archive like this that's under my own control. Because what if YouTube were to vanish and all of those creators that had once made PopCap videos also disappeared? Well, then what would I do? I would have half an archive, because the other half I just assumed that it would remain forever, and then it didn't. So I pushed on, and I think this is one of the last of the better-known properties that we'll see for quite a bit. Because I think next on the list is Bejeweled Twist, which some people have probably heard of, but I imagine a lot of people have never heard of it in their life, and that one's got a weird sort of air about it, so I'm looking forward to showing that off. But I believe the direct next game in the list is The Wizard's Pen, which is a not a missing object game per se, but it's a point-and-click adventure kind of game. It's a weird one for sure. I'll have to take a look at who created it, because that should give a little bit more insight into the design decisions. Because I don't think it was designed by PopCap proper. I think it might have been another spin-top game, but I could be wrong in that. It definitely carries itself like a spin-top game. But the spin-top games are going to haunt me until I'm done with this whole series. Because as it turns out, there are a lot of them, and they were largely... I think they were largely unimpacted by the acquisition, to my understanding, so they kind of just kept making games until the company went under. Which wasn't too long after the acquisition, but they had like a decent amount of breath to continue making games. Okay, I think I can make this. Like so. Haha! I love to draw attention to the artificiality of the two-dimensional picture plane. That's why I included ghosts. Oh, if I can hit this. Well, that was a long shot. That wasn't what I meant to do, but I'll take it. I was meaning to try and steer in the direction of the green peg. The music is quite good. Ooh, wait, I could try something saucy here. Let me clear out everything else. And then, let me see if this works. I'm so upset. No! Fine, if that's the way you want to play it, game, I will work towards Ultra Extreme Fever. Wow. I do think it's kind of interesting as well. I believe the developers of Round Guard said this at one point, that in the modern day, EA has a whole playbook of things that constitute, what's the best way to describe it? Things that constitute Peggle. And basically, things that you are not allowed to do if you make a game so that it is distinguished apart from Peggle. And the list is actually decently expansive. So Round Guard actually had to take quite a lot of extra steps to make sure that they weren't infringing on EA's stipulations. And after all, they were at their mercy to make a game like PopCap in the first place. Or not like PopCap, to make a game like Peggle in the first place. So I suppose better to play by the rules than to get a class action lawsuit filed against you, huh? Not a class action. What am I saying? Getting a cease and desist letter. Class action is a bunch of people under one name. That's something else completely different. A bunch of people suing a company for a centralized reason. Like the case against Roundup or Ashley Madison would be a class action suit. The legal system is one of those things that I kind of wish I knew better, especially when it comes to things like copyright law, because elephants. Because the thing about copyright law is it's something that everyone loves to toss around as if they know everything there is to know about it, but really, very few people actually know how copyright law works, be it intellectual property or actual trademarks, mechanisms, and concepts. The way that it's described is always very ambiguous, and I fear that it's very ambiguous on purpose, so that companies with ill intentions can take advantage of it. Because after all, how can you contest something if you don't even know how it works? So I feel like there should be way better, not education about it per se, but definitely maybe a program for people who want to learn. Because this isn't some horrid blight that's striking the nation or anything. This is just a mild annoyance. Aww. Whoop. Yeah. Whatever you say, Garfield. I am slightly chafed because today the power went out in my dorm, and I don't know what's going on exactly. I think like a circuit must have flipped, or a circuit breaker must have flipped or something like that, because half of my stuff has power and the other half doesn't. So my laptop charger is receiving power and it's plugged into like a plug on the back wall, but I have a microwave and fridge like combo, and neither of them are receiving power. I actually had to move. I have like a I have a surge protector hooked up to the other end of the wall, and for some reason that plug over there is not receiving power. So I'm not sure what's going on. Not to mention there's a modem hooked up to the wall. Not a modem. What's the word for it? An Ethernet port, rather. Not necessarily a modem. There's an Ethernet port that has had power this entire time, and my laptop charger only just got power back like an hour ago, so I don't know what to believe anymore. I'd say such is life in college, but this seems like a unique case. Also, I've gotten so many extra points from the pyramid pickup. Damn. Is Garfield the play for score stuff? Am I going crazy? Like literally, another one. Am I going crazy, or is Garfield actually the play here for like score stuff? There we go. Path is clear, and I have 300,000 points because Garfield reasons. Is this going to be an ace score? It is! What? Garfield's just built different, what the hell? I gotta start using them for, like, if I end up doing the challenges, I'll have to try them. Because that was kind of insane. Oh my god, I got the orange. I was not expecting that to happen. Okay. Oh yeah, this sort of environment reminds me. I was doing some research on EA that was completely unrelated to this PopCap endeavor. I was kind of just doing research on my own time. And I found something really, really interesting. So there is this game. It's kind of a stretch whether or not you've heard of it or not, because it flew kind of under the radar. It's a game by the name of Boom Blocks. It was a Wii game made and developed by EA. And it was actually fairly high quality, I remember. I ended up really liking it when I was a kid, and it was a very good use of the Wii as well. Now, I was doing research on the game outside of this, and just like, for the hell of it, and a few very, very interesting facts came up. First fact was that it was created by EA. The second fact was it was produced by Steven Spielberg. Yes, that one. The movies guy. So how the hell did Steven Spielberg end up with that? Well, the story goes that Steven Spielberg entered into a 3-game-wide contract with EA. Is this? Oh, just one bomb. He entered into a 3-game contract with EA, and I think only 2 of those games ended up seeing the light of day, or 2 of those series, rather. But the first series was Boom Blocks, which is absolutely insane. And for context, the second series, and I think the only other one that saw actual development, was the Medal of Honor series, of all things. And I had no idea before that it was such a big series, but apparently it is really, really, really well selling. And also they just made a lot of games. They made a lot of Medal of Honor games. But that was also around the Wii era, which is wild to me. But apparently the story goes, for Boom Blocks in particular, Spielberg started out saying, I want to make a game that my kids will be able to play. And I think he succeeded 100%. That is an awesome game. But I always think of I think of like the circus area of the sequel to Boom Blocks whenever I think of that one level of Cap Tut with the trapezes. But it was such a shock to me because, again, going back to what I was saying when I was playing regular Peggle, EA as a company is very shifty. I wish I had a better way to describe it, that put the company in a bit more of a positive light, but I really can't. EA is kind of just shifty. I'm sure they're great to work at, but when you're on the consumer end, they are not great. So to have not only a good game, but a game from my childhood, and then realize that it was made by EA and Steven Spielberg, now that is a shock. That's a shock and a half. It's like realizing that a movie from your childhood was co-directed by Dick Dastardly and a famous movie director. Oh, okay, moving pegs are going to be a problem here. No. I was hoping I could sneak that in. Spork is not my favorite. He's pretty fun when you have no strategy at all and you're kind of just firing randomly, which I tend to do quite a bit, so I don't think he's awful, but he's definitely a lot less interesting. Because sometimes you end up in that kind of a situation, and it doesn't matter what character you're playing. You kind of just win regardless. But in situations where you actually need to use your abilities and pull your weight, Spork is not quite as good. I was thinking as well, I think with this style of content that I've been slowly building myself up to, I gotta start time-stamping my conversations or something like that. Because I mean, I don't know if that's why y'all are here, but that's the main reason that I like doing this, is I just get to blab sometimes. Just zone out and talk about whatever comes to mind. And it makes for, I don't know if it makes for good content, but it definitely makes for fun content on my end. Because again, I just have to talk. I'm essentially podcasting, just with a game in the background. But what I eventually... Alright, interesting. So the power just cut to my... The power just cut again. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully it turns back on eventually. But it doesn't seem like it will. It will in the next few minutes, that's for sure. Nah. No, no, no. Ugh, that was bad. That was even worse. Oh, maybe? No. Oh. Yo. Okay. And then I think if I... as far as it'll possibly go... gets me the 1-2... Just have to not choke this shot. Okay, we're good. That was a tricky one. But I was thinking something that I might want to try is this exact formula, but with scripted things to talk about. Because I've noticed that I have noticed the long pauses. I don't know if y'all have, but it's something that I've had to work on for a while, and yeah, it's still a problem. And I've been thinking of ways to potentially solve it, and a way that I thought of is just to have, like, half a script in front of me. Obviously, it's not, I'm gonna try to keep it not wooden, you know? Oh no, I see that dreaded thing, encoding overloaded. So a little bit of fun OBS talk. I use OBS to record all these videos, and there's a thing that can happen where I don't know exactly how it works because I don't know how video files record and how they're saved to the computer. I gotta learn at some point. But sometimes the encoding will get overloaded, and sometimes that causes the video to just completely corrupt. And if it does, that'll suck. Okay, it went away. Hopefully that didn't mess up the video. If it did, I mean, I wish I had a better answer than this, but I can't really do anything about it beyond re-recording the entire video. I don't really have a rewind button that I can hit. Because this ain't a rerun, this is recorded fresh. Oh, no, 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 no. Okay. No, that wasn't what I was expecting, but we take those. And I remember this game is actually a little bit longer than the other one, because you might have noticed I mean, there's a spot for a character that wasn't there before. Oh, right, Claude. Claude wants to be a kaiju. flippers are great. They're kind of bad outside the levels that they were designed for, but in these levels, they're hilarious. But I was thinking, especially when it comes to talking about mythology, it would be fun to just have a script in front of me and just read while I play Tuki or something. Because mythology is the kind of thing that you can kind of, at least for me, I can kind of just talk about because I think it is literally the reason why I still do Latin and classic stuff. Because Greek and Roman mythology is ridiculous in the best possible way. And that's at face value. Like when you go into like the interpretations and like viewing it in different lenses and with different things in mind, like if you view it in terms of like Greek customs or lenses, things like feminism or things like what else comes to mind? The role of women in Roman and Greek society, or things like homosexuality, it makes it even more interesting to read, because different things pop out of the woodwork that you didn't even notice before. Like, for instance, Tiresias. I mean, thinking about it not just at face value, it really calls into question, or it can be interpreted as calling some things into question about, like, gender roles, for example. At least when it comes to the Greeks. I imagine the Romans being much more macho and much more worried about the so-called natural roles wouldn't view the story of Tiresias as being anything more than a funny thing happening on the way to the forum, as it were. Or things like the story of, what else comes to mind? Like the story of Orpheus and Eurydice in the Metamorphoses. And I actually discussed this one before, how Orpheus lost Eurydice, blamed the gods, and then turned into a pedophile, basically. And by itself, that is an extremely weird story. And then you see it with context, and it is still a really weird story, just now you have context. Because you have the context of how Orphism and things like Orphism and how Orpheus was Thracian, and it's supposed to be like, oh, that's why Thracians did pederasty. And it makes a lot more sense. It's still weird, don't get me wrong. Orpheus and Eurydice especially gets so much weirder when you read Metamorphoses. I recommend it. It's weird, it's fun, it's a little bit uncomfortable. But hey, as long as it's not Catullus, I don't mind uncomfortable when I'm reading myths, because a lot of uncomfortable aspects of myths can usually be chalked up to Romans and Greeks were just like that. But Catullus is where I draw the line, because I don't know if I've ever properly discussed Catullus, but he's a weird case. So generally speaking, there were a few distinct types of poets in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and you kind of just picked one type of poetry and stuck with it. Ovid's unique because he didn't just pick one. He perused the whole catalog, and weirdly enough, he got flack for it. For essentially being a master of none, of doing all the types of poetry, but never doing one type particularly well. And do I agree with that? Not necessarily. I think Ovid was a fine writer. But Catullus is strictly love poetry. Everything that he ever did was love poetry. And you might wonder what kind of love poetry, because, you know, love manifests in different ways. And my answer is basically all of them. But to talk about that, first we need to talk about a woman by the name of Lesbia. And yes, I do mean that her name is Lesbia, like lesbian. So, this is kind of a weird case. Catullus was writing a set of love poems, and he sort of created this self-insert character who was also named Catullus, and displayed him as the love of this woman named Lesbia, who is left anonymous, supposedly, but it seemed pretty clear to a lot of, just based on accounts, a lot of people knew exactly who he was referring to. And this woman was the wife of a wealthy Roman senator. And, I don't know, I guess he just, like Great Gatsby style, he just never found out because of reasons, I guess. Oh, come on. That's better. Whoa! There it goes. But Catullus wrote a whole bunch of poetry about this mysterious woman named Lesbia, who, fun fact, hailed from the island of Lesbos, and that's where the term lesbian comes from. It basically means strong woman. It's just strong woman from the island of Lesbos. Greece and Rome and their funny little islands with weird amounts of lore in them. Anyway, Catullus had basically 3 modes, and it was all based on what kind of love he was feeling at the time. There was Hallmark poetry, super sappy, almost to a comical degree, using lots of extended similes and stuff like that. So like, oh, my love for you is like a spring, is like a lone wellspring, overflowing and clear as blue. I don't know. But, that was only sometimes. Because presumably, Lesbia did not fully return Catullus's affections, and sometimes he would reject him. And when he did, when he was rejected, we got some really great basically incel poetry. Now, I say incel poetry specifically because I remember one in particular ends with the line, I forget the exact wording, but it's something to the effect of the words of a woman are worth writing on water. As in, you write on water and then it immediately fades away, so it was meaningless. So it's Catullus and his incel poetry, you know how it is. But the third type is probably the most famous, but for not really the greatest reason. That is his poetry of... How do I even describe this? His diss track poetry, as it were. Because there were other people, and other poets specifically, who knew about Catullus and mocked him for his work. And his response, and I believe it is Catullus 16 in particular, is some of the most crass and horrid classical literature I have ever read. Some of them. Not the most. I think the worst that I've read is still Frogs by Aristophanes, but that's a completely different story. Just look up a translation of Catullus 16 and be warned that it is not meant for the faint of heart, and it is meant for mature audiences. Maybe not. It may not be as bad as I'm making it out to be, but it's pretty bad. Whoa, that was cool. I'm so upset. Come on. But I mentioned as well that Ovid liked to write different kinds of poetry, which was kind of abnormal. So I guess I'll talk about some of the stuff that he wrote. As far as epic poetry, the Metamorphoses is technically epic poetry. Now, it doesn't really fit with the mold because epic poetry has like, I mean, I know a lot. I imagine a lot of you have taken English literature classes. You know the like, it's like an eightfold thing. So many different stupid ideas of like, oh, this epic poetry has to do this, and it has to do this, and it does this most of the time. And it's like, that's always bugged me, because if these are supposed to be tenets of things that epic poetry is always supposed to have, then why are they allowed to break the rules sometimes, but not all the time? That just seems like the rules are not very well defined. Or perhaps that the rules weren't meant to be fulfilled in the first place. So it's not epic poetry in the traditional sense, but it is still epic poetry. It has the meter, it has the like invocation of the muse and stuff like that. But it's a whole bunch of stories of people turning into other things. But, what's the best way to put this delicately? Sometimes it's not transformations of the self. Sometimes it's just an addition or subtraction of attributes of the self. Sometimes that something is virginity. I wish I had a nicer way of putting that, but, you know. Like I said, Greeks and Romans have a bit of an interesting way of doing things sometimes. I don't mean interesting in a good light. But as for his other stuff, I'm racking my brain to see if I can remember. The other thing that comes to mind is his love poetry. Which, I mean, he did love poetry. It's weird, but he did it. And it wasn't quite Hallmark poetry, but he wrote something called the Ars Amatoria, which is basically an ancient Roman pickup guide. It's a bit of a weird thing. But it's not necessarily a very respectful pickup guide at that. It's the kind of, like... the kind of guide that refers to women as females. That kind of a pickup guide. The kind of pickup guide where one of the tips that's given is literally just to hang around the woman in question, and eventually she will fall for you. Which is literally, I think that is just the MO of an incel. Like, I was not expected to talk about incelibacy at length here, but literally, that is the MO of an incel. It's just, oh, if I keep trying, if I keep just doing what I've been doing and make no movements, eventually she'll come to me. I don't have to change anything about myself. Eventually someone will come to me that loves me for who I am. Asterisk. And another person who didn't really appreciate that was, you know, Augustus Caesar. And it was a combination of factors. The Ars Amatoria, I think, was part of it. Ovid was actually put into exile by Augustus. The exact reasons aren't known, but it was a combination of essentially making an example of Ovid by exiling him, because the reason why Augustus believed that there was a civil war and all that was because of a lack of good morals in the people. So I think his intent was to make an example of Ovid as like, oh, look at this crass literature. I mean, it comes across as book burning in a way, but I don't think that's exactly how it was meant, because he wasn't trying to remove scholarly work for the sake of oppressing people. He was kind of just sick of. I think he was also just sick of Ovid. So Ovid was exiled to a little beach village, and he spent the rest of his life sending letters back to Rome, asking Augustus to take him back, and Augustus never did. Though, to be frank, I mean, apart from the fact that he couldn't understand the people, it didn't seem like that bad of a gig. It wasn't exile in the sense of, oh, we're going to toss you out of our country, never return. It was, we have this island resort for you. Just please don't come back, because I'm trying to run a country here. Ooh. Wow. Okay, I will gladly take that. This is kind of a depressing set of levels, because so many of them are such far-fetched things like, oh, I want to be a mad scientist, or I want to be a superhero, and then you get to Tula, and Tula's just like, yeah, I want to have legs. Even all the other Peggle masters have legs, and I don't, and it's sad. I wish I had legs. She basically has the same motivation as the stuff in the cupboard from Beauty and the Beast, and it makes me kind of sad for ragging on her. She just wants to engage with society. Haroon. I mean, we're on Cinderbottom. I think I stopped on Cinderbottom last time, yeah? Oh wait, we haven't done Warren yet either. So we have Cinderbottom, Warren, we skipped Renfield because he was the third one. Cinderbottom, Warren, Master Who, Squid Girl, Marina, that's her name, and Celestial Realm. And those levels tend to take quite a bit longer, so I think I'll call it here. That should section it off into halves, and